Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me this morning. Patrick, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the World Food Programme? What is that about?
Sure. So I work for the World Food Programme. It's the United Nations Food Wing. They work in delivering food and cash assistance to people in 120 different countries around the world. Basically, if there's been a natural disaster or shocks due to climate change or a war, WFP flies in and provides support. I've worked for them for the last 20 years. Most of my career was as an IT professional. But since 2017, I've focused on the use of drones for humanitarian action. And at the moment, I'm the drone data operations manager. So we split drones into three main areas in WFP. We've got the cargo delivery area, which falls under our aviation division. And everything else falls under the technology division, which is drones for collecting data and for providing internet connectivity. And those two are my focus.
That's fascinating. I mean, in the world of data today, where data is actually paramount in everything that we do, can you tell us a little bit about how drones are being used in data collection?
Sure. So I'll give you the example of Cyclone Idai, for instance. It was one of the biggest disasters we've had in quite some time. The entire city of Beira was basically flattened, and then there was a large area of flooding. It was the first time we actually used drones as WFP, or officially used drones as WFP. And we had to do a couple of different things. So the first thing we need to do is save as many lives as we can as quickly as possible. So we had helicopters on hand, and they were looking for people and rescuing people. And we had drones as well that were trying to find places where people were stuck on rooftops or in trees or on little islands surrounded by water. So that's all part of the data collection, is looking to see where people are. Once the rescue side of the operations were finished, we moved into the response side. And for us, that means mapping up of all the affected areas. So using drones, we can map things down to a centimeter or two resolution. And that resolution is good enough for us that we can actually do damage assessments without needing to send people to the area. If we put somebody on a helicopter to go and do an assessment, it means we need to take off 100 kilograms of food and life-saving cargo. So instead, what we would do is we'd send the drones, and they would map out all the affected areas. So we mapped out the city of Beira, and that meant that your groups like UNICEF could go and do an assessment of a school without needing to go there. WHO could go and assess the clinics without needing to be there. So that's our immediate need for the data collection. We've moved on from there. Drones can collect a large amount of data, so you need to be able to analyze it. And in Cyclone Idai, we were doing it manually. We had people looking at maps and marking houses as damaged or undamaged. But we realized that with 60,000 structures, it was taking us too long. So since then, we've developed a lot of AI technology that can help us with that. So now we have a tool which will take an area that could potentially take 3 weeks to do a house-to-house assessment, and we can do it in about 5 minutes, provided we have the drone data. We used that in Hurricane Fiona for the first time, and from getting the area, the location we needed to look at, we would be able to send a drone up, cover the area, and analyze the data in 2 days rather than 3 weeks. And that helps a lot, because now you know that, okay, this area has got 60% of structures damaged. That area's got 30%. We should focus our efforts on this area. So it helps us prioritize. It helps us make better decisions because of the data we've got now.
That's fascinating. Do we have enough people that understand all of this and how the drones are operating? And do you have enough people that help you on the ground? And do you also collaborate with governments? Who do you collaborate with to ensure that your aid actually gets to the people that need it most?
So WFP always works with governments. It's part of our job. As the drone team, what we try and do is we try and actually work with the governments before the disasters have happened. So we train people in the national disaster management agencies of the various countries. In Southern Africa, we've already trained 6 countries in the region. So it would be Mozambique, Lesotho, Eswatini, Malawi, Comoros, and Madagascar. They've already been trained.
That's great.
And we also leave behind the equipment with them. So it's it's no good going and doing training and showing people what to do and then leaving and not leaving any equipment behind. So we try and leave drone sets. We try and leave high-powered laptops to run the AI tools. Our goal is always to have the governments be fully independent, so they can operate without us, and we'll form the next level of support. So if there's an emergency that's too large, for instance, Idai in Mozambique, they said, please help us, and we went in. or if they need a specific skill set they don't have at the moment, they're welcome to call us and we'll go in. In fact, in Cyclone Idai, it was actually the government that was leading the response. So they were identifying the areas, they were helping us allocate different pilots to different places and getting the data back. And they controlled the entire data flow as well. So it's a perfect example of what you can do when you've built the relationships with the governments you need and build capacity in those governments. So
that's amazing work that you guys do. And Patrick, do you actually use the drones for risk management? So do you assess any of the environments before a disaster happens? Because I hear you speak a lot about disaster management post something happening, but do you get involved in any way before a disaster happens?
Ideally, in a perfect world, you would have trained the government so they know how to operate. But we also look at specific high-risk areas, and we've been fortunate to have some funding from the European Union in Mozambique, and they were able to target two of the rivers that flood most often. So the one was the Lukungu River, which is in the middle of the country, and the other was the Buzi River, which caused all the flooding for Cyclone Idai. And what we did there was we actually sent the drones to do very high-level elevation models.
Okay.
So they'll fly over the area, they'll map it as if we're mapping it for a damage assessment. But because the drones cover one piece of the ground in multiple photos, we can actually triangulate and get the exact altitude for everything in the area.
Okay.
And using that data, we can virtually flood an area. And by flooding an area virtually, you can build up risk maps. So we can say, look, if the water level reaches 3 meters, this area is in danger. If it gets to 5 meters, this is the area of danger. And the government of Mozambique has been using that data now to work on evacuation plans. So the community members will know which routes to follow. They'll know who needs to be evacuated first and where we can put them and which areas are safe. And it also helps a future response. If we know if there's going to be a flood, we know now where there might be areas that would be cut off and surrounded by water. So we can then go in faster and react quicker in future emergencies. Hopefully there aren't any. But,
and are there any other natural disasters that you guys look at and model other than floods?
So we focus primarily on floods and earthquakes.
Okay.
We started this with the earthquakes in Nepal. In some areas where you want to do an assessment, you don't actually want to put people between buildings which might be unstable, so drones can cover that. Drones can also cover a very large area, so there was a lot of drone data collected in the earthquakes in Turkey, for instance. So we focus on those. We don't operate at the moment in human conflict. There's just too much risk of the data being used by one or other side, so we stay out of conflict areas. Unfortunately, there's enough work to go around in natural disasters to keep us more than busy.
And what sort of risks do you consider as a drone pilot and as a drone owner? Just when you send out a drone and when you own a drone, what sort of things do you look at?
So protecting people and property is obviously of our highest concern, and specifically people. We don't want to have an incident where a drone crashes and causes an injury or even a death. We try and manage it in different ways. We do have insurance, fortunately, for property, but an insurance payout if you put a big drone onto a person isn't really going to make a difference. So we do operate with different rules and restrictions. We've got what we call our internal drone directive. So we're only allowed to put very small drones over people where it couldn't potentially do any harm. Property is always a risk, but it's a managed risk. So with any type of aviation, you want to manage productivity with protection. The safest drone flight is not to fly a drone, but you get nothing done. So you need to be able to find that balance. And the World Food Programme has got an aviation safety division. They basically audit anything that happens in the aviation world. So from our big cargo flights all the way down to the smallest of drone flights, they oversee that and they help us make these decisions, and they ensure that we've got the right rules and regulations in place and that we have the right insurance in place for that as well.
And I mean, you've spoken about the property insurance, but us as iTOO, we would cover the liability in the event that either a person gets injured or the drone itself, the hull itself, is damaged. And also there's certain things that we would consider things like cyber hacks, because that could be a reality for drone owners as well, right? I
mean, we are seeing it in Ukraine and Russia at the moment quite a lot. It is quite an interesting area. We work a lot with the drone team from the Office of ICT. They work in the areas where the peacekeepers are operating
Yeah.
drones, and obviously those are very high risk areas. A lot of their work is actually in counter drone technologies, so trying to
Yeah.
make sure drones aren't over safe areas.
Yeah.
But it is a risk, and it is a big risk. We were flying recently in an area where there was some sort of jamming technology going on, and our
Sure.
drones kept drifting away.
Oh,
We
no
actually
way.
had one end up in a tree. Luckily, a very small drone and not a very big tree, but we did have to put somebody up the tree to get it. So it is an increasingly big risk, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Is, things like that.
And Patrick, in your talk, you mentioned that you were the only planes that were flying during COVID. How were drones
Yeah.
used in the COVID
So
period?
we weren't the only aircraft flying, but we were the largest
Yeah.
airline flying
Okay.
during times of COVID. We still use drones quite significantly. We were very fortunate. We pre-positioned drones before COVID hit. So when the lockdowns came in place, obviously we do have exemptions from lockdowns as humanitarian workers.
Yes. Yes.
But it isn't easy. It isn't
Yes.
like getting on a flight and just moving.
Yeah.
So we were lucky we had drones in the right locations, and we had people trained all around the world. So we were still able to activate the drones,
That's
but we
fantastic.
weren't able to do it in person. So we
Yeah.
relied on our people in country and our partners who were already trained.
Okay, great. And tell us about your award that you won.
So in 2020, the World Food Programme won the Nobel Peace Prize,
Yes.
which was quite significant for us.
Absolutely.
Our director went to go and collect it, and it was basically to prevent the use of hunger as a weapon of war, which happens unfortunately too often. And it was good to be recognised in 2020,
Yeah.
and it helped us as well. I mean, humanitarian organisations are never fully funded. You're always
Absolutely.
looking for more and better
Absolutely.
funding, and a bit of recognition did help a bit.
Yeah. And then maybe second last question from me.
Yeah.
You spoke about drones being used as Wi-Fi. I find that fascinating.
So-
How does that work?
We call it R2C2. It's the Rapid Response Connectivity Carriers.
Okay.
And it's using drones to provide internet connectivity in a number of different ways. So we've got 3 solutions that do that. We've got one of them here actually, which is
Okay.
it works on a tethered drone. So it's a drone on a really long extension cable.
Okay.
It's a really expensive extension cable. It costs you $25,000, so $500,000
Sure.
rand for that extension
Yeah.
cable, more or less. But it means the drone can fly 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we use Wi-Fi in some cases when we are providing connectivity to a community.
Yeah.
It's increasingly being seen as a human right. We would put up a drone like this and blanket an area of about 3.2 square kilometers with Wi-Fi coverage. So
That's amazing.
the goal is to make sure that people can connect where they are. So
Yeah.
we work, the World Food Programme runs the the telecommunications cluster, and part of their role is services for communities. And at the moment, they would set up a lot of hotspots in schools and at clinics and different places, and people can go there and connect and speak to their family, carry on with their businesses, try and carry on with normal lives. But if you've been injured and you can't get to that location, or
Yeah.
if you're sick, or maybe you don't feel safe moving around because it's in a dangerous area at
Yeah.
night, the idea is if we can put a drone up very nice and high, 90 meters up, and blanket a large area, we can reach a lot more people.
Yeah.
So that's the first of our solution, and it covers 3.2 square kilometers at the moment. Cities are bigger than that, so we've got a couple of ways we can increase our distance, and the one is to use an unmanned airship. We're working with a South African company called Cloudline. They've got an unmanned airship which can, being lighter than air, can stay airborne 8 hours a day. So we'll take our same very, very powerful Wi-Fi hotspot, which was built by one of our partners called Ericsson Response, and they are technology geniuses. So we'll take that hotspot and we'll put it under the airship and we'll slowly drift it over the affected area. And as it's flying over, you get 20 minutes of connectivity. You can send and receive messages. You can talk to people, and then it'll drift back again close by, so you can get more response and
Yeah.
send more messages.
Yeah.
And the final solution, which is the one we just tested a month ago in Sweden, is to use a tethered drone again as a portable cell phone tower. So again, the team from Ericsson Response was able to develop a 4G tower which weighs under 5 kilograms, so incredibly light for that type of equipment. And we mounted it underneath the drone, and the drone is connected to a tether cable, so it flies 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we can put up a cell phone tower in a place where they've all been knocked over, so we'll fly in with a couple of suitcases, we'll get the tower up, And then when responders come in, we give them a SIM card. It's a private WP SIM card, and they can connect. And that means that instead of only being able to connect at the operations center, you can connect where you need to be to work. So we've got teams that run logistics, so they need to be at warehouses or at airports or at seaports. Or you might have the Red Cross who needs to be at the hospital. We don't want these people wasting a lot of time driving between place where there's connectivity and place where they can be productive. And the idea is if we can give them SIM cards in their phones, they can go to these different areas, they can work where they need to be, and they can communicate from where they are by using a private 4G connection. So it's a new solution, and hopefully we'll see it deployed soon. And I think it's going to change the way humanitarians communicate. I think it's got that ability.
That really is amazing. I'm really fascinated. A fascinating conversation that we've had about.
Different use to what we see in the room usually. A lot of people don't see drones as internet tools, but you can't carry a 90-meter tower with you into an emergency. True. It doesn't fit on a plane.
It's true.
If you put it on a ship, it's only there after the emergency, but we can carry a tethered drone.
Okay.
Which is useful.
I imagine that there'd be a lot of regulation and a lot of regulatory things that you need to get over in order for you to operate drones in the various areas that you do. How do you get through that?
So the key is to build relationships before you need to go in. And we do that all over. So our best example is in Mozambique, where we've been working with the government for years in drones since 2017 in Mozambique. And so we built up their trust, and through them we built up trust with the civil aviation regulators. And so because they know us and they know we operate safely, they've been able to give us clearances very quickly. We did the operation in the Boozy mapping, and they were able to give us beyond visual line of sight flight permissions, which is great. There's obviously different regulations around flying 4G equipment and Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is very easy to put up. It's an unregulated frequency. So that one's not a problem. We're building the relationships now to be able to put up 4G networks. If the mobile networks are down, we want to be able to put up our connections. If the mobile networks recover, we don't want to be there anymore. We'll use their connection. So the idea is to get relationships with both governments and the mobile operators in the countries to be able to piggyback on the frequencies that are available when a disaster strikes.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Patrick.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to iTOO TV, where we were coming to you live from BusyNet's drone conference at Emperor's Palace. Signing out, Tove from iTOO Special Risk, your epic partner in specialty insurance.